Good afternoon. Sorry I am a little bit late. Mary David reminded me of the fact that I needed to go on Facebook Live. So, Mary, can you give me a thumbs up or something, or somebody let me know that you can hear me? So I'm thinking that you guys can hear me. If you cannot hear me, just kind of let me know. So good afternoon. So this is our last Facebook Live for the month of I almost said July. It's hot enough to be July, right? For the month of May. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge the passing of a very good supporter of Journey Out. In fact, she was around when we were called the Mary Magdalene Project, and she passed away. About a month ago, we got a phone call from her daughter. Her name was Jane Barrett. She was a longtime supporter. She was 98 years old. She was a dietitian for Long Beach Unified School District, and she was a captain in the Army in World War II. I met her when I first came to Journey Out, and she was feisty, and she was in her 90s then. And you could tell she was extremely independent. So it was very sad to hear of her passing. So Journey Out just wants to send condolences to her family, and we will be highlighting her in our upcoming newsletter. So today's Facebook Live is going to cover implicit bias and adultification. And why is that important? Because as service providers, we need to be very conscious and self-aware of our own implicit bias, because it really does dictate our behavior toward others. And if we're not careful, there can be unintentional consequences to that, where we end up hurting or making those feel bad, and those are the people that we serve. So I think it's really important. And unfortunately, in light of today's environment where we are right now, there are people that are being hurt as a result of prejudgment, of stereotyping, of seeing that person as either being non-human. And so we as service providers, since a lot of times those are the people that we help, we need to be very conscious of our own implicit bias, because we all have an implicit bias. So I'm just going to give one example of implicit bias. So let's just say, you say, I have no prejudice against people that overeat. If people overeat, obesity, I don't treat those people any different. Notice I said those people. So now you go to McDonald's and you're sitting there with your little salad because you're trying to lose weight or maintain the weight that you have. And then you see someone who is grossly overweight, and they have a Big Mac, they've got a shake, they got the whole deal going on. And when they bite into that Big Mac, you, without even thinking, go like this. Well, guess what your implicit bias is? You have an implicit bias against those people that you might see as being overweight. Because sometimes when we see people that are overweight, we automatically think it's their fault. Now, we don't know. That person could have a certain condition in which it's very difficult for them to lose weight. They might be struggling. They might have lost 100 pounds and might be celebrating with that Big Mac, but you don't know. Because implicit bias is an unconscious thought process, but we will consciously say the opposite. So just being aware of that, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So I'm going to talk about right now the notion of rescue, because a lot of times those of us that are in positions in which we're helping others, we will use the term that we are rescuing someone. And so I got to give out some of my shout outs. So Cecilia, can't wait to volunteer for JO. We can't wait to see you. Du jour, happy to have you back to do your chair yoga with our clients. So thank you so much for tuning in. So the notion of rescue. So regardless of the age of the trafficking victim, we often become fixated on wanting to help people, and then we become fixated on the notion of rescue. So, but what happens after that? We in the human trafficking community, we have a term, we shy away from that term of rescue in and of itself because it doesn't give merit to the process that it plays when a trafficking victim is actually leaving the life. Because I'm able to say, I can rescue you. Okay, I can rescue you, but that's only temporary. So I can temporarily give you clothing, a roof over your head, but what I've not done, but what I have not eliminated are those thoughts and memories that are in your head that you have to deal with every night. What I have not eliminated are the multiple victimizations that you may have experienced in a lifetime. So therefore, the use of rescue can bring about the here and now heroic mindset, because we do feel good helping others, but we can't get caught up in that and not notice the people that are in front of us that we are trying to rescue. Also, what comes with that heroic mindset is that we are feeling the need that we need to fix you, right? But what we must think about is that there is a need for years of healing and sustainability. We must meet people where they are and assist them in their journey with a notion of empowerment, not rescue. So I hope that notion of rescue makes sense, because what I'm doing for us right now is kind of setting the tone or the framework that talks about implicit bias and talks about the things that we need to look in the mirror about as service providers. So I'm not only speaking to you that are out there, I'm also speaking to myself and anybody that is there to help someone, because although we feel that we want to help people and empower them, sometimes the way we do that, we're doing the opposite. We're disempowering them. So I got to try to not talk with my hands because I do that a lot. And then when I look at Facebook, I'm like all over the place. Okay, so I'm going to stay still. So just stay with me on this one, because I actually got this from my daughter, who I talk about Erin a lot, who graduated from Spelman, right? She was a philosophy major. So one day we were talking and she was telling me about the epistemology of resistance. I'm going, that's kind of an interesting concept. So just bear with me on this one. So the epistemology, because you're going to see how it fits in. So the epistemology of resistance is by a gentleman by the name of Jose Medina. And what he does is he brings light to the idea that our relationships with each other can also endanger us being impartial, and therefore it weakens our credibility. And so this really can happen in situations with well-meaning advocates such as ourselves. We might unintentionally underestimate the strength of those that we're trying to assist. So under certain circumstances, this mindset could cause the person or the group to feel less empowered, because what we end up doing is reconfirming their marginalization. So I hope that makes sense. It's like the overwhelming need. We sometimes have that overwhelming need to be the voice of the voiceless. And when we do that, we can underestimate one's power, and we endanger our relationship with them. And we can also weaken the credibility of the client because we become the all-knowing. So this is what Medina actually states, and I'm going to read this to you. It says that members of groups that have been systematically disadvantaged and mistreated, women, people that are of racial minorities, those that we see as being handicapped or disabled, or those coming from another country. And so we often unfairly depict them as being intellectually inferior. We sometimes will mischaracterize them as lacking certain cognitive capacities, or simply given less authority and credibility than the members of other groups. See, when we do that, what we start doing is we start speaking for those that we're serving. So I'll give you an example. So let's say you have to take someone to a government agency like welfare or Social Security. And so you're sitting there with your client, and the person says, "What is your name?" And then we answer for that person, right? That's unconsciously being done, that the person can't even speak for ourselves. So we have to be very cognizant. So as I was reading Medina's words, I thought of us as advocates who fight for those experiencing social exclusion or marginalization, and who may know, and we as advocates, we may only know that person's circumstance from the outside, not as a lived experience. So for instance, the human trafficking advocate may have never been trafficked, or that immigration advocate who's a naturalized citizen, or a homeless advocate that has never been homeless. And then I wondered if our lack of a lived experience could unintentionally silence those same people that we're fighting to empower. So as a result, us as advocates, now we place ourselves in a position where now we become the voice of the voiceless, but at the same time, possibly silencing the voice of those who need to be heard. So the person who becomes the voice, meaning the advocate, can simultaneously distort their own image, and now we become the knower, Knower. And the knower believes they know what's best because their life decisions or their birthright took them down a different path. So for example, we might see the person that we're fighting for might lack social credibility or intellectually inferior. Now remember, if this is all unconscious, so you don't say, okay, you know what, my client Jane, she is so intellectually inferior, I'm just going to have to speak for her. We don't think of that in a conscious level, but we may think of it in an unconscious level because Jane did not finish high school. So because we think Jane didn't finish high school, we figure she can't fill out an application, so we fill it out for her. Think about how Jane must feel about that. So the knower may believe that they've got to intervene and make decisions for the person without first seeking their input. The knower advocate, hearts are in the right place, but by excluding the person from making their own decision, it stifles the empowerment that we hope that they seek. And therefore it perpetuates an unfair depiction and the same inferiority that Medina speaks of. So I'm not suggesting, and please don't think that I am, I'm not suggesting that the fight for social inclusion can only be fought by members who share the same lived experience. On the contrary, I really believe that there is room for everyone on every level. And as I say this, I see that MC Molendor has has joined us, and I'm calling it out, from the city attorney's office. And I'll tell you, MC may not have lived these experiences that I'm speaking of, but she gets it. And she has enabled Journey Out and the city attorney's office together to help to serve people that have been victim of human trafficking. She gets it. So again, I'm not suggesting that in order for us to be able to help those that we serve, we have to live the same experience, but we have to acknowledge that our experiences are different. But I think there is room for everyone on all levels of society. However, I am suggesting, though, that advocates, especially those who do not share lived experience of those they are helping, should not replace nor silence the inactive voice with their own. Advocates for the fight for justice must always include the ones they are fighting for in order to find solutions, and continue to develop one loud voice for all to hear. Instead of being the voice for the voiceless, we become one loud voice to penetrate the barrier of inequality and judgment. One voice. And we have to include those that we fight for in our solutions. And that's why in Journey Out, we hire so many survivors, because we need them. We need them to help us with the solution. Adultification. One of the things that I think is extremely important. And what adultification is, especially as it pertains to African American girls, Black girls are treated like they're older than they are that Black girls are treated older than what they are. And studies have found that this can start as early as 5 years old. Unfortunately, the way others perceive Black girls gets worse with age. And in one report, a young adult described her family's difficulty in finding an elementary school that would accept her after an allegation of assault and battery was added to her record when a ball she threw at recess hit a girl in the face. Oftentimes what you will see is not only are they treated older, but and this has been shown in studies as well, in the school system, where they are suspended more often. They get violations a lot of times for the dress code. They may be sent home for having extensions in their hair. And so we need to be aware of that, because even as service providers, right, we will get people that are different from us, and we may tolerate something from one group of people, but not tolerate something from another group of people. Or we will work harder for a human trafficking victim that may not be African American, because we may see this other person as a true victim, right? And so we're going to nonstop pull out all the stops to be able to help that person, because after all, she is a victim, she's a true victim of human trafficking. Where you might look at a girl of color and you might see her as older than her years. And so, or we might see her as having an attitude, but not understanding where does that attitude come from. Because if it comes from complex trauma, then absolutely what you might see is an attitude. And so oftentimes when we see people, instead of saying, what's wrong with you, we may have to talk about what happened to you. And so this all forms the framework of what I'm talking about as it pertains to implicit bias. Because implicit bias refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decision in an unconscious manner. And as a result of it, it drives our behavior. So I'll give you an example, because I found myself to do this, and it's terrible. I'm going to go ahead and admit this. So sometimes if we are speaking to somebody who may not be from the United States, as an example, and let's say they have an extremely thick accent, um, we have a tendency to talk louder to them, and it's not that they can't hear. It's just that English is not their first language. But we'll have a tendency to talk louder to them. Or we'll have the thought process of seeing them as intellectually inferior. But even though English may not be their first language, they might speak 5 languages, right? And so we have to be very careful, not only when we're serving somebody, but when we are trying to find other organizations that might be able to help them better. I'll give you another example. When I first came to Journey Out and we were doing the PDP, Prostitution Diversion Program, and a lot of times we would get, girls that were being arrested off of Sepulveda and Figueroa and Western. And then LAPD LAPD and City Attorney's Office the court system started referring young ladies that were coming out of the illicit massage establishments. And so, this is when I first got here, we were putting them in the PDP group. So you had the girls from FIG and escort services and all these different, coming from all these different places, and we were putting them in with women that were from Thailand or they were from Korea. Some of them didn't even speak English. And, we're trying to use Google Translate. And, after that happened a few times, I started thinking, you know what, this is not really benefiting those that are coming to us for sustainability and wanting to change their lives. So that's how we ended up partnering with APEC. We needed to partner with APEC because we were trying to serve a group of people that honestly, we did not understand. We didn't speak their language. We were not, I don't feel that we were as culturally competent or as we should have been, right? Because things were happening like some of the girls in the group were upset because maybe the girls that were coming from the illicit massage establishments were not owning up to the idea of prostitution or human trafficking. And so there were some cultural differences. So immediately what I did was have somebody come in fact it was Shari Farmer from the DA's office, came in and gave us a class on cultural differences and how to deal with people of cultural differences. We partnered with APEC, who not only was able to help us give our classes with pure translation, but they were also able to give casework to that particular to that group, with the understanding, because they came from the same culture, the same place, and honestly, it was probably one of the best things that we did. First, understanding, that's that self-awareness piece, and really doing something about it. So I just wanted to encourage those of us that are helping people that may not necessarily look like us, may not become from the same culture. They might have issues that might be totally different. Instead of turning away and may seeing them from a lens of a stereotype, acknowledging the fact that you as an organization might have to do something different to be able to help that client. Because I really, truly believe in collaboration. I truly believe that it takes a village in order to help those that we serve. Any questions or comments about anything that I just talked about or shared? No? Okay. Because you guys already know this stuff already. So one of the things that Mary always gives me a list of things that I am not supposed to forget. So I have to read these as I get toward the end, so just kind of bear with me. Let's see. She says, I got to read it, I'm sorry. She says, again, she told me to remind you guys, I guess I was supposed to say this first, that if you have any questions as I go along, I will answer them. Be sure and follow us on all of our social media. We have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Journey Out LA. And again, it matters that you retweet what we do on social media, because it not only spreads the word about human trafficking, but it also gives people knowledge of what's happening in our neighborhoods and why we should care about our cause. It also helps our grant partners know that we are really out here doing the work. We also on our join our newsletter, because we give information on what we're doing in terms of COVID updates, our street outreach. I was just out there again 2 Fridays ago, and I think I spoke about this. I was out doing outreach on Figueroa, and unfortunately, the girls are still out there. The customers are still out there. But I've also described a mood where you could really tell that those that are being forced into prostitution are being supervised even harder because they don't want to be out there. And then when you think about those that may have once been trafficked that may no longer have a pimp, but they're being driven by poverty. And so we talk about those things. Our COVID fundraiser is still live, and it will be linked at the top of the comments, also on our homepage and our website at www.journeyout.org. The reason why we're having a COVID fundraiser, and we've spoken about this, is that we've had clients that have reached out to us who have lost their jobs, who are sleeping on the floor, who are couch surfing, that are in need of help for groceries. This COVID has really hit our clients, and where it's really hit them is also with those that have journeyed out of the life in which we've been able to help them with things like jobs and housing. When COVID hit, for some of them, it sent them backwards. And so they're reaching out for help because they don't want to go back out there on the street. So again, this helps us address the special needs that have arisen due to COVID, including getting extra hand sanitizers for the girls that are out there in the street, feeding families of our clients, buying incidental for clients who are pregnant or who have children, and assisting survivors who have become unemployed. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter, mary.david@journeyout.org, or click on the link to contact us at our website so that you can sign up. And are there Facebook, let us know what you thought about our series in terms of Facebook Live. We try to do something every week, and I always told Mary, I'm uncomfortable talking to a screen on the computer, but we've gotten some pretty good feedback from what we've been doing. And again, not only sharing what we're doing, but talking about other organizations that are out there that are doing the same type of work. So with that, do you guys have any questions, or did I forget anything? Mary, tell me, did I forget something? I know you're probably typing furiously. I know it's always the silence part that just drives me nuts. I hope everyone is staying safe. I know we're starting to reopen again, but I just encourage everyone to stay safe. I know it's hard walking around with the mask at 120 degrees, but it's so important. And I think the important part of that is that we're not only protecting ourselves, but we're protecting others. And if nothing else, we're making other people feel Mary's saying she's having a hard time coming up, so I'm talking to Mary, but I'm talking to Mary, but she's not there. Okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So with our masks, I know it's 150 degrees outside, so I know it makes it harder. Some of us have not been able to get our hair done, our hair colored, but this too shall pass, and so we just have to continue doing what it is that we're doing. So with that, I thank you guys for joining us during this series that we've done in May. We're going to turn and try and do a podcast so that we can continue, because I think it's really important for us to stay connected. And then I get to see people like DeJure and MC and Cecilia, and I see Angelica has joined us as well. And I get to see you guys, and we get to stay in touch. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Stay connected with us through our social media as well as our newsletter. Stay safe and stay well, and see what are some of the new things that are going to be coming up with Journey Out. Thank you again. Talk to you guys later. Bye.